I, 26F, have always been the quiet one in my family. The one who smoothed things over. The one who never made a fuss. My mother, Eleanor, liked it that way. She thrived on control, and my compliance was the soil in which her authority grew. My sister, Chloe, was the opposite. She was the vibrant one, the artistic one, the one who could do no wrong. Our lives were a constant performance, with Chloe in the spotlight and me managing the curtains backstage. My father, Richard, was the silent audience, applauding whenever my mother told him to. It was a stable if suffocating ecosystem. But ecosystems can collapse with a single change in the weather. The change began not with a storm, but with a quiet statement. My mother, her face tight with rage, her voice dangerously low, said the words I had always dreaded but somehow expected. "You are not family anymore." It was the final move in a game of emotional chess we had been playing for years. She expected me to crumble,
to beg,
to apologize for whatever perceived slight had led us to this point. She expected tears and frantic promises to be better, to be more like Chloe, to be worthy of her love. I did none of those things. I just looked at her, held her gaze for a long moment, and nodded. "Okay," I said. The single word hung in the air, a tiny, solid thing in the cavernous space of her fury. I did not fight. I did not argue. I simply accepted her declaration. Her shock was visible. Her mouth, which had been a thin, hard line, fell slightly open. Confusion warred with anger in her eyes. This was not in her script. My father shifted uncomfortably in his armchair, looking from her to me, a spectator at a match where one player had suddenly walked off the court. Chloe, perched on the arm of the sofa like a pampered cat, just looked annoyed, as if I had ruined a perfectly good afternoon of drama. An hour later, my mother's world tilted on its axis. The phone call that did it was not from me. It was from a man she barely remembered, a lawyer named Mr. Harrison. He was the executor of my grandmother's estate. He called to inform her that her access to the trust fund statements had been revoked. He politely explained that all control, management, and oversight of the fund had been officially transferred to its sole beneficiary, me, a month ago, on the day I had quietly signed the papers that made it mine. The trust fund she had used as a leash for my entire adult life was no longer her weapon to wield. It was my shield, and she had just thrown me out of the very family she thought it bound me to. The pressure had been building for years, a slow, steady increase in temperature that I had grown accustomed to. My grandmother, my mother's mother, had been my safe harbor. She saw the dynamics in our house with a clarity no one else seemed to possess. She saw how Eleanor praised Chloe for breathing and criticized me for winning academic awards. "It makes your sister feel bad, Amelia," my mother would say, as if Chloe's feelings were my responsibility to manage. My grandmother understood that this was not about Chloe's feelings, but about my mother's need to keep me small. When my grandmother passed away, she left a sizable trust fund. My mother immediately took charge of it, explaining that it was a complex family asset that she would manage for both me and Chloe. "It's to secure your futures," she had said, patting my hand. "You don't need to worry your pretty little head about it." I was 18 at the time, and it sounded reasonable. I was grieving. I trusted her. That was my first mistake. Over the years, the trust fund became a phantom presence in our lives. It was the reason Chloe could afford to attend an expensive art school in another state, the reason she could live in a trendy apartment without a job, the reason she could start and abandon a dozen different creative projects without a single financial consequence. For me, it was a different story. The fund was a tool for my mother to exert control. When my car broke down, she offered to help with money from the fund, but it came with strings. "I'll approve the expense," she'd say, "but I want you to start coming to Sunday dinners again. You've been so distant." Every request was a negotiation, a transaction where I paid with my autonomy. I wanted to take a course in graphic design to supplement my steady but unexciting office job. My mother dismissed the idea. "That's a silly hobby, Amelia," she said over the phone. "The fund is for serious things for your future, like a down payment on a house. When you meet a nice man, of course. It would help my career, I tried to argue. It could lead to a promotion. Your career is fine, she said, her tone final. You have a stable job. That's more than enough for you. Let's not get greedy, the implication was clear. Ambition was for Chloe. Stability was for me. I was the sturdy, reliable foundation, and Chloe was the beautiful, ornate house built upon it. The final confrontation began, as most of our conflicts did, with Chloe. She had a new dream. This time, it was a high-end fashion boutique. She had no business plan, no retail experience, and no concept of budgeting. What she had was a vision, and in my mother's eyes, that was enough. Eleanor called a family meeting, which meant she had made a decision and required our presence for the announcement. We sat in the formal living room, the one with the pristine white couches that no one was ever truly comfortable on. My mother started by talking about the importance of supporting each other's dreams. Her eyes were fixed on Chloe, shining with a maternal pride that I had rarely seen directed at me. Chloe has a wonderful new opportunity, she announced, beaming. A chance to build something truly special. A boutique that will showcase her incredible eye for fashion. Chloe preened. It's going to be amazing, Mom, she said. I've already found the perfect location. My father nodded along. That's wonderful, dear, he said. I stayed silent, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It did, with a thunderous crash. To make this happen, my mother continued, turning her gaze to me, we will need to make a significant investment. I've decided to liquidate a portion of the trust to fund the startup costs. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. The trust? I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. Grandma's trust. My mother's smile tightened. Yes, Amelia. It's a family asset, and this is for the good of the family. Chloe's success will be all of our success. But it's a lot of money, I said, thinking of the figures she had casually mentioned in passing before. She was talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Is that a good idea? To put so much into something so new? Chloe scoffed. You wouldn't understand, Amelia. You have no vision. You're happy with your boring little job and your boring little life. I'm just asking a practical question, I said, trying to keep my voice even. This was when my mother's patience snapped. Her face, which had been a mask of proud motherhood, hardened into the familiar lines of irritation. The decision has been made, she said. It is not up for discussion. I am the trustee, and I have decided this is the best use of the funds. But I'm a beneficiary, I said, a spark of defiance igniting within me. Don't I have a say? You have a say when you understand how the world works, she retorted. Until you are 30, I manage your share. That was the arrangement. Your grandmother trusted me to make the right decisions, and that is what I am doing. The lie was so bald, so confident, that for a moment I almost believed it again. For years, she had repeated it. I am in charge until you are 30. It was a fact of my life, like the sky being blue or the grass being green. But something inside me, a small, persistent voice that had been growing louder over the past year, whispered that it wasn't true. I don't think that's right, I said. The words were out before I could stop them. My mother stood up, her posture rigid with indignation. What did you say to me? I don't think you have the authority to do that without my consent, I repeated, my voice gaining a little strength. The room fell silent. My father stared at his hands. Chloe looked at me with pure venom. My mother's eyes were like chips of ice. I have every authority, she hissed. This is about family. It is about supporting your sister. It is something you have never understood. You have always been selfish. Always hoarding your affection, your time, your approval. And now you want to hoard this money, which was meant to benefit everyone. That's not true, I whispered, the injustice of it stinging more than the lie itself. I had spent my life trying to please her, trying to be the perfect, invisible daughter she wanted me to be. It is true, she shouted, her voice rising. You are a cold, ungrateful child. After everything I have done for you, everything this family has given you. The argument spiraled from there. It was a blur of accusations and insults, all directed at me. I was selfish. I was jealous of Chloe. I was unloving. I was trying to sabotage my sister's happiness. Through it all, I remained quiet, absorbing the blows. The more I refused to engage, the angrier she became. My silence was a wall she could not breach, and it infuriated her. Finally, she played her last card, the one she had held in reserve for a moment just like this. Her voice dropped to a deadly calm. If you will not support this family, if you will not do this one thing for your sister, then you are not part of this family. We are done. You are not family anymore. She stood there, chest heaving, expecting my collapse. My father looked at me with pleading eyes, begging me to just give in, to restore the peace at any cost. Chloe smiled, a small, triumphant smirk. They all believed they had won. But as I looked at my mother's face, I didn't feel fear or sadness. I felt a profound, clarifying emptiness. The love I had been chasing my entire life was not real. It was a prize she dangled, always just out of reach, to ensure my obedience. The family I had been trying to hold together was a fiction, a stage play with assigned roles I was no longer willing to perform. So I nodded. Okay, I said. I stood up, my movements calm and deliberate. I walked out of the living room, down the hall, and toward the front door. I did not look back. I could feel their stunned silence behind me. I opened the door, stepped out into the cool evening air, and closed it gently behind me. I did not slam it. It was not an act of anger. It was an act of acceptance. I had been dismissed, and I was finally free. The first thing I did after leaving my mother's house was drive to a small park overlooking the city. I sat on a bench and watched the lights twinkle to life as dusk settled. I didn't cry. I felt strangely hollow, as if something heavy I had been carrying for years had been lifted, leaving behind a void. The words, "You are not family anymore," echoed in my head, but they had lost their power. They were no longer a threat, but a statement of fact. A fact I had just accepted. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Maya, my best friend since college. I had texted her a single sentence before I started driving. It finally happened. I answered the phone. "Hey," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Amelia? Are you okay? What happened? Where are you?" Her questions tumbled out, laced with worry. "I'm at Crestview Park," I told her. "And I think I'm okay. I'm not really sure." "I'm on my way," she said immediately. "Don't move." While I waited for Maya, I thought about the lie. Until you are 30, my mother had said it with such conviction for so long. Why had I never questioned it? Because it was easier not to. It was easier to believe that she was in control, that she knew best, and that my role was to be patient and obedient. To question her would have been to disrupt the fragile peace of our family, a peace I was conditioned to protect at all costs. But the peace was a lie, just like her words. It was the tense, suffocating quiet of a hostage situation, not the warm, easy silence of a loving home. My grandmother had known that. I remembered her giving me a thick manila envelope on my 16th birthday. "Keep this safe, Amelia," she had said, her eyes serious. "Don't let your mother hold on to it for you. This is yours. When the time is right, you'll know what to do with it." Inside was a copy of her will and all the documents related to the trust. I had glanced through them once, been intimidated by the legal jargon, and then stored the envelope in a fireproof box in my closet, just as my grandmother had instructed. My mother had dismissed it at the time. "Oh, that's just a copy for your records, dear," she had said breezily. "It's all very complicated. I'll handle the real paperwork." Maya arrived 20 minutes later, a large cup of hot chocolate in one hand and a determined look on her face. She sat down next to me and handed me the cup.
"Talk," she said. So I did.
I told her everything.
The boutique.
The demand for money. The argument. And the final, severing words. She listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from anger to sadness and back again. "She really said that?" Maya asked when I finished. "She really said you're not family anymore?" I nodded, sipping the hot chocolate. It warmed my hands, chasing away some of the chill that had settled deep in my bones.
"She did.
And the worst part is, I think she meant it. She's a monster, Amelia, Maya said, her voice fierce. A manipulative, controlling monster. And your dad and sister just let her get away with it. They're afraid of her, I said. Just like I was. Maya picked up on the past tense. I don't think I am anymore, I said, and the realization surprised me. When she said it, I expected to be devastated. But I just felt nothing. It was like she confirmed something I already knew. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Then Maya turned to me, her eyes narrowed in thought. What about the trust? You said she claims she controls it until you're 30-inch. That's what she's always said. I confirmed. But is it true? Maya pressed. Have you ever actually read the documents your grandma gave you? I thought back to the thick envelope in my closet. I looked at them once a long time ago. I didn't really understand them. Well, now is the time to understand them, Maya said, her voice firm. You are a smart, capable woman, Amelia. Do not let her get away with this. You need to go home, pull out that envelope, and read every single word. If she's lying, you need to know. Her words were a lifeline. They gave me a purpose, a next step. It was better than sitting in the dark, replaying my mother's cruelty in my mind. You're right, I said. I need to know for sure. When I got back to my apartment, the first thing I did was retrieve the fireproof box from the back of my closet. I placed it on my kitchen table and took a deep breath before opening it. The manila envelope was right on top, just as I had left it years ago. My grandmother's familiar, elegant handwriting was on the front. For Amelia. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled out the sheaf of papers. It was dense and filled with legal terms, but I forced myself to read it slowly, line by line. I used my phone to look up words I didn't understand. It took over an hour, but then I found it. The specific clause detailing the terms of control. It was written in plain, unambiguous language. The trust was to be managed by the appointed trustee, Eleanor Vance, until the beneficiary, Amelia Vance, reached the age of 25. Upon her 25th birthday, sole control, authority, and ownership of the trust and its assets would be transferred to the beneficiary. There was no mention of the age of 30. There was no clause about the trustee retaining any oversight or co-signing authority. I read the paragraph 3 times, then a fourth. It was unmistakable. My mother had been lying to me for 8 years. 8 years of financial manipulation, of holding my own future over my head, were all based on a complete and utter fabrication. I wasn't just a victim of her favoritism, I was the victim of calculated, long-term fraud. I turned 25 over a year ago. For more than 12 months, that money had been legally, indisputably mine, and I hadn't even known it. The anger that had been a small spark earlier in the evening now roared to life. It was a clean, hot fury that burned away the last vestiges of sadness and confusion. She hadn't just disowned me. She had been actively deceiving me to maintain her power. I thought about all the times I had asked for help, only to be met with lectures and conditions. The time I needed a new laptop for work and had to sit through a 2-hour dinner where she detailed all my financial shortcomings before agreeing to release the funds. The time I wanted to move to a safer apartment and she refused, saying it was an unnecessary expense. All that time, I could have just bought the laptop. I could have just moved. I was a millionaire begging for pocket money. The sheer audacity of it took my breath away. She was planning to steal a massive portion of my inheritance to fund my sister's latest whim, based on a lie she had constructed out of thin air. And she had called me selfish. She had called me ungrateful. I leaned back in my chair, the papers spread out before me. The hollow feeling was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. She had pushed me out of the family. She had shown me exactly who she was. Now I would show her who I was. Not the quiet, compliant girl she had raised, but the woman my grandmother had trusted to be in charge of her own life. My first step was to verify everything with a professional. The next morning, I called the law firm listed on the trust documents. I asked to speak with Mr. Harrison, the lawyer who had drafted the will. His secretary informed me that he was semi-retired but still took meetings with long-standing clients. I explained who I was, and she scheduled an appointment for me for the following week. The week leading up to the meeting was agonizingly slow. I went to work, I ate, I slept, but my mind was constantly churning. I went back and forth between rage and a strange sense of empowerment. My mother tried to call me several times. I ignored her calls. My father sent me a text message. "Please call your mother.
She's worried."
Let's just fix this," I didn't reply. What was there to fix? A lifetime of lies? A family built on a foundation of deceit. Chloe also sent a series of texts. The first one was angry. "I can't believe you're being such a brat. Mom is really upset." The next one was manipulative. "This boutique is my one chance, Amelia. Don't you want me to be happy?" The final one was a simple, pathetic plea. "Please don't ruin this for me." I read them all and felt nothing but a distant pity for her. She was so enmeshed in my mother's world that she couldn't see she was just another pawn. I confided in Maya about my plan. We met for coffee, and I showed her the clause in the trust document. Her eyes went wide. "Oh my God, Amelia, this is huge." "I know," I said. "I have a meeting with the lawyer next week to confirm it all and figure out what to do." "What do you want to do?" she asked, her gaze searching mine. "I want to take control," I said, the words feeling solid and real as I spoke them. "Completely. I want to move the fund to a new financial advisor, someone who answers only to me. I want to cut her off from ever seeing a statement again. I want to take back what's mine." "Good," Maya said, nodding with approval. "That's exactly what you should do. This isn't about revenge. This is about justice. It's what your grandmother wanted." Her support was the final piece of armor I needed. I spent the rest of the week preparing for my meeting with Mr. Harrison. I made a list of questions. I reread the trust documents until I practically had them memorized. I was nervous, but it was the nervousness of an actor about to step on stage for a role they knew perfectly, not the fear of someone walking into an ambush. The law office was in an old, stately building downtown. Mr. Harrison's office was filled with dark wood furniture and leather-bound books. He was a kind-faced man with white hair and gentle eyes that reminded me of my grandmother. He greeted me warmly and offered me a cup of tea. "Amelia Vance," he said, smiling. "I haven't seen you since you were a little girl. You look so much like your grandmother." "Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Harrison," I said, taking a seat across from his large desk. Of course, he said. "Eleanor is a client, but your grandmother was a dear friend. Her file is one of the few I still manage personally. Now, what can I do for you?" I took a deep breath and laid the copy of the trust document on his desk. "I have some questions about this," I said. "Specifically about the conditions for my access to the funds." He picked up the document and scanned it, his expression unreadable.
"Ah, yes.
"The trust your grandmother Elizabeth set up for you. A very forward-thinking woman. Your grandmother," he looked up at me over his spectacles. "What are your questions?" "My mother has always told me that she is the sole trustee until I turn 30. I began. "She said she has full control until then." Mr. Harrison's eyebrows shot up. He looked back down at the paper, then at me again. "She told you that? That you have to wait until you're 30? "Yes," I confirmed, my heart starting to beat a little faster. He let out a small, quiet sigh and shook his head slowly. "Amelia, that is not correct." "It is not correct at all." He tapped a specific paragraph on the page. "As it clearly states here, your mother's trusteeship was designed to end on your 25th birthday. You turned 26. When was it? Last March?" "Yes," I said. "Well, then," he said, looking at me with a mixture of sympathy and concern. "As of last March, you have been the sole legal authority over this trust. Your mother's role as trustee expired on that day. We sent the initial paperwork to you at the time, to your registered address." I frowned, confused. I never received any paperwork. Then it hit me. The registered address was my parents' house. I had lived there until just after my 25th birthday, when I had finally saved enough from my job to get my own place. My mother must have intercepted the mail. "I see," Mr. Harrison said, his tone careful. He clearly understood the implication. Well, the transfer of authority is not automatic. It requires your signature on a few documents to formally accept control and direct the financial institution managing the assets. Until you do that, the account remains in a sort of stasis. Your mother would not be able to make withdrawals without your consent, but she would continue to receive the management statements. So she knows, I said. She would have seen on the statements that her status as trustee had expired. It would be noted on the quarterly reports, yes, he confirmed. The account designation would have changed. The cold fury returned, more intense than before. She knew. She had known for over a year that her control was gone, but she kept up the charade, intercepting my mail and continuing the lie, hoping I would never find out. Her plan to fund Chloe's boutique wasn't just deceitful. It was a desperate attempt to get my signature on a withdrawal authorization before I realized I held all the power. What do I need to do to take control now? I asked, my voice hard as steel. Mr. Harrison looked at me, a glimmer of admiration in his old eyes. He saw my grandmother in me then, I think. He saw her strength. It's very simple, he said. We just need to fill out the forms. We can do it right now, if you like. Yes, I said without hesitation. I would like that very much. For the next hour, we went through the paperwork. I signed document after document. I filled out a form to change the mailing address for all correspondence to my own apartment. Then came the most important part. Mr. Harrison explained that I could keep the trust with the current investment firm or move it to a new one of my choosing. I want to move it, I said immediately. I want a clean break. I want a new advisor, someone who has no prior relationship with my mother. He nodded, understanding completely. A wise decision. I can recommend several reputable firms. He gave me a list and I chose one. We filled out the transfer request. When it was all done, I had a folder full of copies. The originals would be couriered to the respective financial institutions that afternoon. The entire process would take a few weeks to complete, but the initial steps were irreversible. I had taken back control. As I was getting ready to leave, Mr. Harrison stopped me. Amelia, he said, his voice gentle. Your grandmother was a very astute woman. She loved you very much, but she was not blind to your mother's nature. She worried about Eleanor's favoritism toward Chloe. He reached into a drawer in his desk and pulled out a sealed, cream-colored envelope. It was addressed to me in my grandmother's handwriting. She left this for you, he said. She instructed me to give it to you on the day you came into this office and claimed your inheritance for yourself. She said you would know when the time was right. I believe that time is now. I took the letter, my hands shaking again, but this time with emotion, not nerves. Thank you, I whispered. I waited until I was back in my car to open it. The letter was short, but every word was infused with her love and wisdom. My dearest Amelia, it began. If you are reading this, it means you have found your strength. I know your path has not been easy. I have watched your mother try to dim your light, and it has broken my heart. I want you to know that your light is brilliant. Do not ever let anyone convince you otherwise. This money is not a gift. It is a tool. It is your independence. It is the freedom to build a life of your own design, away from the shadows of obligation and manipulation. Use it to be happy. Use it to be bold. Use it to be unapologetically you. Know that I have always been proud of you. I am proud of the quiet strength you possess, the kindness in your heart, and the resilience I knew you would one day fully embrace. You are more powerful than you know. All my love, Grandma Elizabeth. Tears streamed down my face as I read her words. They were the validation I had craved my entire life. She had seen me. She had understood. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about honoring her faith in me. My resolve hardened into something unbreakable. I was no longer just reacting to my mother's cruelty. I was actively carrying out my grandmother's legacy. The next few weeks were a quiet battle fought through paperwork and phone calls. I met with my new financial advisor, a sharp and empathetic woman named Sarah. Together, we went over the portfolio and set up a new plan, one that aligned with my goals, not my mother's. The official transfer of assets was initiated. The clock was ticking. During this time, the silence from my family was deafening. After their initial flurry of calls and texts, they seemed to have retreated to plan their next move. I knew they were waiting for me to break. They expected me to come crawling back, desperate for the familial connection I had just lost. They had miscalculated badly. The connection they valued was one of control and dependence. The freedom I was experiencing was more intoxicating than any sense of belonging I had ever felt with them. I used the time to shore up my own life. I paid off my student loans in one lump sum. I put a down payment on a small condo in a neighborhood I loved, a place that was all mine. I enrolled in the graphic design course I had always wanted to take. With every step, I felt more like myself, the person I was meant to be before my mother's expectations had boxed me in. The call I had been waiting for, the one that would signal the end of the war, came on a Tuesday afternoon. It was my mother. I had been ignoring her calls, but I knew this one was different. I let it go to voicemail. The message she left was dripping with false sweetness. "Amelia, darling," her voice cooed. "It's your mother. We haven't spoken in a while, and I've been so worried. I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Your father and I would like to have you and Chloe over for dinner on Saturday. To talk things through. To get our family back on track. Please come. It's important." I smiled. The trap was being set. This was it. The meeting where they would present me with the papers to sign for Chloe's boutique, expecting that I had been sufficiently punished by the silent treatment and was now ready to comply. I texted her back a simple reply. "Okay, I'll be there." I spent the next few days preparing. I met with Sarah again to ensure all the transfers were complete. She confirmed that the assets were now securely in a new account under my sole name. My mother, father, and sister had no access and no visibility. Sarah also prepared a concise summary of the current asset value and a letter confirming her firm's management of the account. This was my ammunition. I also spoke with Maya. "Are you sure you want to walk into the lion's den?" she asked, her concern evident. "I'm not walking in as a lamb anymore," I told her. "I'm walking in as the zookeeper."
They just don't know it yet.
On Saturday evening, I drove to my parents' house. The place I had grown up in, the place that held so many memories of feeling small and insignificant. Tonight, I would walk out of it feeling tall. I rang the doorbell, and my father opened it. He looked tired and stressed. "Amelia," he said, forcing a smile. "I'm so glad you came." "Hello, Dad," I said, my tone neutral. I walked into the living room. My mother and Chloe were sitting on the white couch, arranged in a perfect portrait of familial harmony. My mother stood up and approached me, her arms open for a hug. I did not reciprocate. I stood still, and she let her arms drop awkwardly to her sides. "Amelia, thank you for coming," she said, her voice laced with the practiced sincerity of a seasoned performer. "I've missed you." "You know how to use a phone, Eleanor," I replied, using her first name. The small act of defiance registered on her face, a flicker of annoyance before the mask was back in place. We went through the motions of a strained family dinner. My mother talked about her garden club. Chloe talked about her vision for the boutique, using words like curated, experiential, and bespoke. She spoke as if it were already a reality. My father tried to engage me in small talk about my job, but my one-word answers quickly shut it down. Finally, after dinner, my mother cleared her throat. The moment had arrived. "Amelia," she began, her tone shifting to one of serious business. "I'm so glad we could all be here tonight. I know things were heated the last time we spoke, and I am willing to forgive you for the things you said." I almost laughed. "Forgive me? I didn't say anything," I reminded her. "You were the one who was yelling." Her jaw tightened. "Be that as it may. We are a family, and families support each other. Which is why we need to finalize the investment for Chloe's business." She slid a folder across the coffee table toward me. "These are the papers from the bank. We just need your signature on the withdrawal authorization." I looked at the folder, but didn't touch it. I looked at my mother, then at Chloe, then at my father. They were all watching me, a trio of expectant faces. They really believed this would work. They believed that after a few weeks of exile, I would be so desperate for their approval that I would sign away a fortune. No, I said. The word was quiet, but it landed in the center of the room like a stone. Chloe's face crumpled. Amelia, don't start this again. This is my dream. I am not funding your dream, Chloe, I said, my voice calm and even. It's a bad investment. It is not a bad investment, my mother snapped. It is an investment in your sister. In this family. This family doesn't seem to include me, I pointed out. You made that quite clear. You are not family anymore, those were your words, weren't they? My mother waved a dismissive hand. I was angry. I didn't mean it.
Of course you're family.
Now, stop being dramatic and sign the papers. This is it. The moment of truth. My heart is pounding, but not with fear. It's a steady, powerful rhythm. I feel a strange calm settle over me. It's interesting, I began, leaning forward slightly. You keep talking about your authority as the trustee, the person who makes the decisions. Because I am, she said, her voice sharp. Until you are 30. That's the thing, Mom, I said, letting the word Mom hang in the air for a moment before delivering the blow. I've read the trust documents. The ones Grandma gave me, and they say something very different. A flicker of panic in her eyes. She recovered quickly, but I saw it. You're mistaken. You don't understand the legal language. Oh, I think I do, I said. It's actually very clear. Your trusteeship ended on my 25th birthday, more than a year ago. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken truths. My father looked at my mother, a question in his eyes. Chloe just looked confused. My mother's face was a blank mask, but I could see the frantic calculations happening behind her eyes. That's a ridiculous interpretation, she finally said, her voice a little too high. You need a lawyer to understand these things. It's a formality. I agree, I said. Which is why I met with Mr. Harrison last month. The color drained from her face. Mr. Harrison, the one person who could definitively expose her lie. Her composure finally cracked. You did what? I met with him, I repeated. He was very helpful. He explained everything. He even told me that the bank would have sent me paperwork on my 25th birthday to initiate the transfer of control. Paperwork I never received. I wonder where it could have gone. I let the accusation hang in the air. My father was now staring at my mother, his expression one of dawning horror. He was weak, but he wasn't a fool. He was starting to understand. And you know what else Mr. Harrison did? I continued, my voice still level. He helped me fill out the new paperwork. The forms to take full, legal, and sole control of my trust. We also filed the documents to move all the assets to a new financial management firm. That transfer was completed last week. I reached into my bag and pulled out the letter from my new advisor, Sarah. I placed it on the coffee table on top of the folder my mother had tried to give me. This is a letter from my new advisor, I said. It confirms that 100% of the assets from the Elizabeth Vance Trust are now in an account that I, and I alone, control. You no longer have access. You will no longer receive statements. You have absolutely no authority. Chloe finally understood.
What?
What does that mean? She wailed, turning to my mother. Mom, what does she mean? My mother was speechless. She stared at the letter as if it were a snake. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The architect of this entire deception had just watched her building collapse into dust. It means, I said, looking directly at my sister, that the money you were planning to use for your little vanity project is gone. Because it was never yours. It was never family money, it was mine. And my mother lied to all of us about it for almost a decade. The argument exploded then, but I was no longer at the center of it. Chloe turned on our mother, screaming, You told me it was guaranteed. You promised me. My father was stammering, asking Eleanor, Is this true? Did you lie about this? And my mother, cornered and exposed, did what she always did. She lashed out. But this time, her target wasn't me. It was everyone else. I did it for this family, she shrieked. I did it to protect you. Chloe is an artist. She needs support. And you, she snarled, pointing a trembling finger at my father, you never had the ambition to provide the life she deserves. It was chaos. A beautiful, cathartic, long overdue implosion. I stood up. No one seemed to notice. They were too consumed by their own drama, the drama that had been simmering under the surface for years, finally boiling over. I walked to the door. Before I left, I turned back and looked at the three of them, a dysfunctional tableau of greed and deceit. My mother saw me, and her eyes, wild with fury and humiliation, locked onto mine. "You have ruined this family," she screamed. "No," I said, my voice clear and steady in the storm of their shouting. "I just stopped being the one holding it together. You did the rest all by yourselves." And then I left. I closed the door on their screaming and walked out into the night, feeling lighter than I had in my entire life. The performance was over. I had finally taken off the costume and walked off the stage. The drive home was quiet. I didn't turn on the radio. I just savored the silence. When I got to my new condo, I made a cup of tea and sat on my balcony, looking out at the city lights. It was the same view as the park where I had sat with Maya, but tonight it looked different. It looked like a future. My future. An hour later, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I had a feeling I knew who it was. I answered. "Is this Amelia Vance?" a man's voice asked. It was clipped and professional. "Yes, it is," I said. "This is John Sterling, from Sterling, Price and Associates. I'm calling on behalf of my client, Eleanor Vance." My mother had lawyered up. I had to give her credit for her speed. "What can I do for you, Mr. Sterling?" I asked, my voice calm. "My client has informed me of a dispute regarding a family trust," he said. "She contends that you have unlawfully seized control of assets that are under her management." I almost laughed. "Unlawfully? Mr. Sterling, I suggest you advise your client to be very careful about using words like that. The only unlawful activity here has been her misrepresentation of the trust's terms for the past 8 years, not to mention the potential mail fraud involved in intercepting legal documents addressed to me. I have a signed statement from Mr. Harrison, the man who drafted the trust with my grandmother, confirming the timeline and my legal standing. I also have confirmation from 2 separate financial institutions regarding the legal and proper transfer of assets into my name. So, if your client wants to pursue this, I welcome it. The discovery process will be very illuminating." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear faint, muffled shouting in the background. It was my mother, undoubtedly coaching him. "My client," he said, his tone now much more cautious, was simply acting in what she believed to be the best interests of her daughter. "Her other daughter, you mean?" I corrected him. "And what she believed to be in her best interests was to commit fraud. Tell your client that she has 2 options. She can accept the reality that the trust is mine, and I will never speak to her or her lawyer again. Or she can proceed with a frivolous lawsuit, in which case I will countersue for damages related to financial misconduct and emotional distress, and I will make sure every detail of her deception is made public. The choice is hers." I hung up before he could respond. That was the last I ever heard from Mr. Sterling. My mother was many things, but she was not stupid. She knew when she was beaten. Exposing her lies in a court of law would destroy the one thing she valued more than money, her reputation among her friends and community. The fallout came in waves. My father called me a few days later. He sounded broken. "Amelia, I
don't know what to say."
I didn't know. I swear I didn't know the details." "You didn't want to know, Dad," I said, my voice devoid of anger, just filled with a quiet sadness. "You saw how she treated me. You saw how she favored Chloe. You heard the things she said. And you never once stood up for me. You just sat there and let it happen because it was easier than dealing with her anger. Your silence was a choice." "I love you, Amelia," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I know you do in your own way," I said. "But love isn't passive. It's an action. And you never acted." "I need some space, Dad." "I can't talk to you right now." I hung up. It hurt, but it was a necessary cut. The wound he had allowed to fester for years couldn't be healed with a single, Desperate phone call. Chloe's reaction was more predictable. She sent me a barrage of text messages that cycled through every stage of grief, but for her lost boutique, not our family. There was denial. Mom will fix this. Anger. You're a monster. I hate you. Bargaining. If you just give me half, I'll never ask for anything again. And depression. My life is over. I didn't reply to any of them. After a week of her digital tirades, I blocked her number. The most surprising call came from my Uncle Ben, my father's brother. He had always been a peripheral figure in my life, pleasant at holidays, but never deeply involved. He had heard about the blow-up through the family grapevine. I'm not going to pretend I know all the details, Amelia, he said. But I heard you finally stood up to Eleanor. I just wanted to call and say good for you. It's about time someone did. You knew? I asked, surprised. Everyone knew, he said with a sigh. We all saw it. How she treated you, how she put Chloe on a pedestal. But Eleanor is, well, she's Eleanor. Nobody wanted to start a war with her. Your father should have protected you, but he's been under her thumb since the day they met. I'm sorry we all stood by and watched. But I'm proud of you. Your grandmother Elizabeth would be, too. She was a tough woman. She didn't suffer fools. You've got her spirit. His words meant more to me than he could ever know. It was a confirmation that I hadn't been crazy, that the unfairness I had felt my entire life had been real and visible to others. They had just chosen not to see it. Life settled into a new rhythm, a peaceful rhythm. I excelled in my design course. I started freelancing and my work was good. I was making a name for myself. I sold my old car and bought a new, reliable one. I furnished my condo with things that I loved, not things that were practical or approved by my mother. For the first time, my home felt like a reflection of me. Maya was my rock through it all. We celebrated every small victory. The day I got my first freelance check. The day I hung the last picture in my new living room. The day I realized I had gone a full week without thinking about my mother. About 6 months after the final confrontation, I ran into a cousin at the grocery store. She looked at me with a mixture of awe and pity. Oh, Amelia, I heard about what happened. It's just terrible. What's terrible? I asked, genuinely curious about the version of the story that was circulating. About Chloe, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. She had to declare bankruptcy. The creditors took everything. And your mother had to sell their house. They're renting a small apartment now. Eleanor is devastated. I felt a brief, surprising pang of something. It wasn't pity. It was finality. The consequences of their actions had finally caught up with them. My mother had built her entire identity around her beautiful home and her successful children. Without the house, and without Chloe's imaginary success to brag about, she was left with nothing but the truth of who she was. Chloe, it turned out, had not waited for the money to be secured. She had signed a lease on the boutique space and placed massive orders for inventory, all on credit cards and personal loans my mother had co-signed, assuming the trust fund money was a sure thing. When the money never appeared, their house of cards collapsed. They had leveraged a future based on money they had no right to, and they had lost everything. I finished my shopping and went home. I didn't feel happy about their misfortune. But I didn't feel sad either. I felt a quiet sense of justice. They had made their choices. They had gambled with my future, and when they lost, they had to pay the price. I sat on my balcony, the same one where I had taken my first deep breath of freedom, and I opened the letter from my grandmother. I had read it dozens of times, but tonight, the words felt different. Use it to be happy. Use it to be bold. Use it to be unapologetically you. I was doing that. I was building a life my grandmother would be proud of. A life of my own design. The cost had been the family I was born into, but the reward was the family I was choosing for myself. A family of friends like Maya, of supportive relatives like Uncle Ben, and most importantly, a family of one that I had finally learned to respect and protect. Myself. My mother had told me I was not family anymore. She thought it was a punishment. But she had given me the greatest gift of my life. She had given me my freedom. And for that, I would never have to thank her. The silence from her side of the world was complete now. There were no more calls, no more texts, not even angry messages through relatives. It was as if the Vances, Eleanor, Richard, and Chloe, had ceased to exist in my universe. And with their absence, my own world expanded in vibrant color. The graphic design course led to an internship, which quickly turned into a full-time job at a prestigious agency. My work was valued. My ideas were heard. I was promoted within the first year. The quiet, compliant girl who was told her career was fine was now leading projects for national brands. I found a passion I never knew I had, a talent my mother had tried to dismiss as a silly hobby. My personal life flourished as well. I traveled. I saw parts of the world I had only ever dreamed of. I sent Maya a postcard from Paris, from the top of the Eiffel Tower, with a simple message. Grandma would have loved this. I made new friends, people who knew me as Amelia, the confident designer and world traveler, not Amelia, the overlooked daughter. They knew nothing of the family drama, and it was liberating. I was not defined by my past trauma. I was defined by my present happiness. One day, about 2 years after the final confrontation, I was having lunch with Sarah, my financial advisor. We were reviewing my portfolio, which had grown significantly under her expert management. "You've made some incredibly smart decisions, Amelia," she said, pointing to a chart. "Not just with your investments, but with your life. It's been a privilege to watch you build this for yourself." "I had a good teacher," I said, thinking of my grandmother. "She taught me the value of independence." "Well, your independence is certainly secure," Sarah said with a smile. "Speaking of which, there's a small, lingering matter I need to bring up. A dividend check from an old, pre-transfer investment was mistakenly mailed to your parents' old address. It was returned to sender, and the company finally tracked us down." "Oh," I said. "It can't be for much." "It's not," she confirmed. "A few $100s. But it brings up a point. We should do a final sweep to ensure all your contact information is scrubbed from any accounts associated with your mother. Just to be safe." "That's a good idea," I agreed. Later that week, Sarah's assistant sent me a list of minor accounts, old store credit cards, magazine subscriptions, things I had signed up for when I lived at home. As I went through the list, one item caught my eye, a joint savings account at a local credit union. It had my name and my mother's name on it. I had completely forgotten about it. My mother had set it up for me when I was a teenager, a place for me to deposit checks from my part-time jobs. She had insisted on being on the account to help you manage it. I hadn't used it in years and assumed it was empty. Out of curiosity, I called the credit union. After verifying my identity, the customer service representative confirmed the account was still active. "What's the balance?" I asked, expecting her to say a few dollars and cents. "The current balance is $92,451, she said cheerfully. I was stunned into silence. "I'm sorry, can you repeat that?" She repeated the number. I couldn't believe it. Where had that money come from? Then a memory surfaced. My grandmother, a few years before she passed, had mentioned setting up a separate investment for me, something outside the trust. It was meant to be a surprise for my 30th birthday. She must have been making deposits into this account over time, and my mother, as the co-signer, would have seen the balance growing. This was the money she was living on. This was how she and my father were surviving after selling their house. She hadn't touched the principal, likely because it would require my signature, but she must have been siphoning off the interest, treating it as her own private income stream. Another layer of her deceit, another secret she had kept. The audacity was breathtaking. My fury, which I thought had long since cooled, flared up again. This wasn't just an oversight, it was another calculated theft. She had been quietly living off my grandmother's final gift to me. I didn't hesitate. "I would like to close that account," I told the representative. "And I would like a cashier's check for the full balance mailed to my address."
"Certainly," she said.
"As you're the primary account holder, we can process that for you. We will just need to send a final closure notice to the secondary name on the account." "That's fine," I said, a grim smile on my face. Please do. 2 weeks later, the check arrived. I deposited it into my investment account. A few days after that, I got a phone call. It was my father. He sounded frantic. Amelia, the bank account is empty. The money is gone. Your mother, she's having a breakdown. She said it was her retirement fund. It was never her retirement fund, Dad. I said, my voice cold as ice. It was Grandma's last gift to me. A gift she was stealing from, just like she tried to steal from the trust. You should ask her about that. But we need that money to live, he pleaded. We have nothing left. That is not my problem, I said. You stood by for 26 years while she emotionally and financially abused me. You watched her try to steal my inheritance to give to my sister. You made your choice. You chose her. Now you get to live with the consequences of that choice. Do not ever call me again. I hung up the phone and blocked his number. I felt no guilt. I felt no remorse. I felt only the clean, sharp edge of a final boundary being drawn. They had burned the bridge, and then they had been surprised to find they could not cross the chasm. The final, lingering thread to my old life was severed. I was completely, utterly free. My grandmother had given me the tools for independence, but I had been the one to build the house. And it was strong. It was secure.
And it was all mine.
The silence that followed was the most peaceful sound I had ever known. They had finally learned what it feels like to have nothing. I had finally learned what it feels like to have everything that truly matters.